Well, let's bring in Sky News host James Morrow now to discuss the stories of the day. Welcome, James.
Great to be here, Caleb.
Always a pleasure. Now, opposition Peter Dutton, the leader, opposition leader, slammed the Prime Minister today for his potentially embarrassing voice referendum failure, saying he shouldn't have just listened to the top-end elites when he was drafting it. Take a listen.
The Prime Minister predicted months ago that this would set back reconciliation, that it would create an international reputational risk for us. But did he stop? Did he change the wording? Did he tighten the wording? No, he did none of that because Alan Joyce and others were telling him not to.
Do you reckon Alan Joyce was telling him what to do, James?
Yeah, no, actually, I don't think it was Alan Joyce who was telling him what to do there. I think Peter Dutton is right on part of that, but I think that actually the fact is that he couldn't stand up to his own left flank, and he couldn't stand up, the Prime Minister that is, to the Aboriginal lobby that wanted the most maximalist position on the voice possible. Remember, I mean, people like Megan Davis, Caleb, always remind us that this whole thing has been in the works for years, and that's absolutely true. There's been, academic papers and meetings and all of the different meetings that went into creating the 26-page Uluru Statement from the Heart, not just the one-pager, And the thing about all of this is that, these people, the people behind it, driving it, if you read the academic papers, if you read the working group notes, are very invested in the most maximalist version of this possible. Now, of course, what happened was when that started to get tested in the real world, people said, well, here's the problem here, here's the problem there. And the whole issue about advice to the executive and not narrowing the scope of what those issues could be, that's done so much to make people think, I'm not so sure about it. But Caleb, the ultimate point here is that the voice is a divisive idea that seeks to permanently bureaucratize race in this country. And I think that most Australians are looking at that and going, I just want to help Aboriginal people. I just don't know that this is the way to do it.
Yeah, and that's why it will fall over. I mean, I think there are very few people in Australia who don't want to help Aboriginal people. They're just not convinced this is the way to do it. And while we're on the voice, look, it's probably good practice to stay off Twitter anyway, but the Australian Electoral Commission has gone viral for seemingly suggesting, and some would say even encouraging, double voting. So they tweeted, quote, if someone votes at two different polling places within their electorate and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place, their vote is counted. Now, that's technically true, but then along comes New South Wales Labor MP Meryl Swanson, who has urged voters herself to hashtag vote early and hashtag vote often, which of course is pretty irresponsible for an MP to be doing. Now, the AEC had to come out and quickly tweet that multiple voting is an offence and it's very rare, and that is also true, and they will catch up with you if you do it. But A, it was very poor wording from the AEC to suggest it in the way they did to begin with. But what on earth is a sitting MP doing running around, even if it's a joke, saying vote early, vote often?
Well, look, I mean, I think, Meryl was making a reference to, the old sort of Chicago joke about corruption there.
Of course.
I know, but I'm far more, frankly, concerned about what the AEC has been up to with this because, it's not just this. It's been about, I think the fact that they've been shown to be basically impotent in the face of the defiance by the Yes campaign. They said these purple signs that say vote yes and are designed to look for all money like their official AEC government signs, which could be confusing in some communities. That there's no action actually being taken. And the Yes campaign says, we'll comply, but they aren't complying clearly. Every message box I have is full of people sending me pictures where they're not complying, and the AEC doesn't see fit to do anything about it. This is where I think the AEC is doing itself a huge amount of reputational damage. And it's just a shame because so many institutions in this country seem to have been corrupted by politics. The AEC was always one that never was. And, they are creating the impression that they are. And I think that's just a terrible thing to do to one of these great Australian institutions. So we don't have the problems like you have in the United States, but eventually you will.
Yeah, and rightly or wrongly, I think you're right. It's a perception thing. And as we always talk about in politics, perception is reality. And speaking of a strange...
Caleb,
go on.
This is the key thing here, Caleb. It's all about trust in institutions.
Yeah.
And, you know, since Trump came along, we've heard people from the left side of politics say, oh, you know, their trust in institutions is declining. We saw that through COVID, and we've seen this through elections in the United States. And it would seem to be incumbent on people to do everything they could to restore that faith by not acting in any way that could be even interpreted one scintilla as being political in these very neutral organizations, not just the AEC, but the CSIRO and a whole lot of other agencies I can name.
Now, the PM's obviously got the voice to worry about, but apparently he's got something else to worry about because he's preparing for his upcoming China trip, and he's been warned to avoid travelling in his RAAF jet because there are fears that systems could be hacked by Chinese spies. I mean, if they can get into the plane, what else can they get into?
Well, I mean, it just goes to show that it's a great sort of little reminder here as the Prime Minister attempts to reset relations with China. And insofar as that goes, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and that's fine. But that we need to be very, very careful about the nature of the power that we're dealing with. I have never heard of this before in all of my years of covering politics, that you would be nervous about taking your own official jet to a state visit because of that sort of level of hacking that might be occurring. I mean, it's utterly shocking to me. And yet, you know that the signals intelligence stuff is exceedingly sophisticated, and that's a great game that both sides play.
Yeah, now the government's condemned a threatening video today that was sent to Lydia Thorpe from a balaclava-wearing bloke who says he's a neo-Nazi, and we should issue a warning. The story contains images and words which some viewers may find offensive. But in the video, the man can be heard proclaiming his support for a white Australia and burning the Indigenous flag. But Lydia Thorpe now says the Victorian police aren't protecting her properly from such attacks. Take a look.
I can't rely on Victoria Police after they kill my people. So where is my support? F off you. Where is my protection in this country? You want to paint me as an angry black woman? Well, you are about to see an angry black woman.
Of course, no one wants any such video to have been sent to her,
Sure.
But my God, she doesn't do herself any favours behaving like that, does she?
Yeah, look, I mean, do we all condemn neo-Nazis? Absolutely, But that's not the question here. I think the real shame of this story is that, this is one of those issues where Lydia Thorpe is making the story all about her. And, yes, the video was sent to her, but, it then turns into this whole sort of storm around her. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but, it's actually the AFP that is responsible for protecting members of parliament in this sort of situation. They have ways that they do this. They have been protecting people on both sides of this referendum campaign. I'm no fan of the Victorian police, believe me. You know how often we show that video mashup of their behavior during COVID on outsiders, but I just think that this is not really kind of helpful here.
Certainly not. James Morrow, thank you for your time, mate.
Thanks, Caleb.